My family called the police on my 5-year-old daughter while I was at work. I came home, saw her in tears in front of the officers, and then I did something they in no way expected. Please help us get our first 10 subscribers. Subscribe to the channel and like this video. I came home half a day earlier than I had planned. It was a quiet, almost joyful conspiracy with myself to catch Lily at a time when she hadn't yet had time to miss me. But instead of her laughter or the rustle of pencils, I saw 2 policemen in the living room, standing there like they'd been put there instead of furniture, waiting for me to explain what was going on in my own house. Lily sat on the carpet, clutching the green dragon like a life preserver, eyes red, cheeks streaked with tears. Next to her was her mom, in her perfectly pressed cardigan as always, and Jenna with her. We're all doing this for the greater good. Smile. We called the police, Mom announced as if she were reading the weather report. Lily needs to learn that pushing is not allowed. It's a lesson. She pushed my Macy, Jenna added, looking at the officers for support. She has self-control issues. Laura doesn't notice it. I stared at them and tried to get the simple thought into my head. You called the police on a 5-year-old? An officer with the badge M. Ortiz took a seat next to Lily and spoke flatly. There's no offense here. Everyone is safe. When they left, the room was left with the smell of cheap deodorant and the feeling that the walls had become alien. I turned to my mom. Is this your way of caring? If you were home, nothing would have happened, she answered without pause. Laura. Jenna folded her arms like she was preparing to pray. You're exaggerating. Mom helped you while you were chasing your career. I'm not your emergency airbag anymore, I said. Lily won't be alone with you. Not with you, Mom. Not with you, Jenna. You're overreacting, Mom said with the same expression that others used to comment on oversalted soup. I pointed to the door. On her way out, Jenna stopped by the shelf of photos. What, you're gonna put the pictures away too? I put away anything that has a grip on my throat, not my hand. The door closed. Lily moved to the couch, cradling the dragon tightly. I sat down next to her, and in that moment I felt her breathing become more even. She didn't ask a single question, and that was worse than any words. Late that night came a text from my mom. You're ruining your family through emotion. You need to learn to delegate. A couple minutes later from Jenna. We're still around whether you like it or not. I muted the sound and went to check on Lily. She was asleep with her nose pressed against the dragon's, and there was such a stubborn stillness to it that I realized my decision was final now. I walked through the house, touching things I'd made or chosen myself. The chair with the crooked leg I'd repaired at 3 in the morning. The shelf I'd assembled in the kitchen on Sunday. The cracked mug, but Lily's favorite. It was all mine. And I wasn't going to let any more people in here who think fear is a parenting tool. As a child, I knew. All it took was one word for my mother to change her tone and freeze the room with her stare. I had been silent then. But now I had a voice and I used it. Lily didn't have to get used to love being served with a seasoning of guilt and threats. I looked out the window. The evening light reflected in the panes of the neighbors' houses, where someone was having dinner, someone was watching TV. And I felt for the first time in a long time that this was my space, my walls, my air. No one has the right to make it a stage for their performances. I remembered how Lily had recently shown me a drawing of a rainbow with the words "Our Home" on it. It wasn't just a child's sketch, it was her way of saying that she was safe here. And I knew I had an obligation to keep it that way at all costs. I walked to the window and noticed a neighbor taking out the trash, rustling bags, and his dog guarding the porch with an important look. Somewhere in the distance, a door slammed and someone spoke in a low voice, as if afraid to disturb the evening. A bicyclist appeared from around the corner with a basket from which a baguette and a bunch of wildflowers protruded. A car drove by below, leaving behind a slight smell of gasoline mixed with the scent of wet asphalt. A light draft swung the curtain, and it touched my shoulder as a reminder that the house had a quiet life of its own. In the apartment next door, someone was strumming a guitar falsely, trying to pick out a familiar tune. Somewhere nearby, a cat meowed, unhappy that she wasn't allowed in the entryway. The evening sun was slowly creeping down the wall, coloring it a copper hue. I heard the laughter of passersby, short laugh, like someone remembering an old joke. A puddle glistened on the sidewalk, reflecting a streetlight that hadn't yet been lit. The aroma of freshly baked bread wafting from the street brought me back to the years when the only warm place seemed to be the little bakery by the park. From the kitchen came the occasional click as the metal of the kettle cooled after a long boil. Across the street, a young man with a shabby backpack turned around every 2 steps, as if checking to see if his treasure was still there. I held my gaze on the old wallpaper, where the faded pattern seemed like a map of an unknown city. In the apartment a floor above, something heavy crashed to the floor with a thud, and I heard a squeezed voice. A breeze brought the scent of smoldering wood, and the nights in the open air came to mind. There was a forgotten button lying by the table leg, its history already erased from memory. Laughter drifted from the wall, and I felt my lips stretch into a smile. Lily's small handprint, left in the morning, was on the glass. I noticed a slight ripple of shadow from the curtain that reminded me of the movement of the sea. Outside the window, a streetcar slowly floated by, jingling as if in a hurry only itself. A neighbor was walking her dog, and he persistently pulled her toward a bush with fallen apples. A flock of birds flew over the rooftops, splitting into 2 wings and reassembling into one. I remembered the taste of the cherry pie my neighbor used to bring me. The old vase on the shelf reflected the light as if a candle burned in it. Somewhere behind me I heard the rustle of paper, as if someone were writing a letter. A clock ticked in the kitchen, but I realized it had been standing for a long time. I looked up at the ceiling and saw a thin crack like a horizon line. From far away came the rumble of the highway, muffled by the evening air. The painting on the wall swayed, as if from the quiet sigh of the house. I always knew that in our family there was an invisible sign that said, "Come in apologizing." As a kid it meant, if you wanted mom's attention, come in with an apology, even if you didn't do anything. It worked differently for Jenna. She'd show up cranky, and mom saw it as character. Dad was around but like a shadow, always busy, always in business. He didn't get into our little wars, just quietly left the room. I learned to read that silence as deal with it yourself. And I did. I backed off so as not to awaken the beast in my mom's eyes. As I grew up, my mom built Jenna into a reward system. A dress for smiling, a trip to the park for being in a good mood. For me, lessons in the kitchen on how to fold towels properly. You'll need it when you're married, she'd say, as if she'd signed a contract for my life in advance. When Dad died, the house got even quieter. It was as if mom had decided that her word was now law, and I was the main source of resources. It started with little things like, "You're going to the store anyway, so buy me some." Then, "Pay the electric bill, I'll pay you back." And she never did. Jenna, of course, never paid for anything. Why would she when I'm here? I thought that's what family support was back then. We help each other. Only each other in their mind meant I was paying their bills and they were making me feel needed. When I had Lily, my mom suddenly perked up. She started coming over more often, bringing Jenna's old toys. Half of them smelled like mothballs, the other half like other people's stories. Lily reached for her at first, and then she started hiding behind my back. I wrote it off as shyness until I heard her mom whispering to her, "Mommy gets tired and angry sometimes, you have to be a good girl." It was the same thing she was saying to me. Only now the victim was smaller in stature and 27 years younger. I remember sewing myself a skirt out of an old curtain in 5th grade, and my mother called it a show of perseverance, but immediately added that the fabric was too cheap. Our living room always smelled of polish and something sour, as if the walls knew more than people were saying. In the summer, we'd go to the cottage, where mom would make me weed the beds and Jenna would let me sleep in until dinner. When I brought home my diplomas from school, mom would hang them in the hallway right up against the coat rack so no one would see them. Jenna always got new sneakers for motivation, even if the old pair looked like they were from the store. In the evening, as Lily and I sat on the couch, I caught myself counting how many times throughout the day my mom had inserted the phrase, "You should be grateful." Sometimes I think gratitude to her was a currency to be demanded but not given. She liked to say she did everything for her family, but she made the word family sound like property to her. I could see Lily's shoulders clench when mom raised her voice, even if it was about the weather. At times like these, I felt like the past was coming back into my living room uninvited. In the closet still lay the plaids my mom had brought, assuring me they would still serve. Every time she came in, I could feel the cold creeping into the house with her. Lily sometimes asked why Grandma talked as if we owed her something. I didn't answer because the answer was too long and too heavy for a 5-year-old. One winter day my mom made me take out the trash without a jacket, explaining that it would make me tougher. To Jenna, she was making cocoa and plaid at the same time. I remember the smells of cookies coming from the neighbors' windows, and our kitchen only smelled like ammonia from scrubbed floors. As a child, I often sat on the windowsill and looked outside, imagining that one day I would move to a place where I was welcome. Now when my mother calls, I recognize her voice from her first breath. Always sounds like the beginning of a rebuke. Lily has learned to hide drawings if there's anything on them that might trigger Grandma's comments. Sometimes I think the walls in my apartment still remember her footsteps. I often catch myself checking my phone even when I don't want to hear her voice. There are phrases that stick in my memory like stains on fabric, be grateful, and I do everything for you. Those words always sounded less like concern and more like judgment. Jenna had a way of nodding to her mom in a way that made her glow with pride. It made me feel like a third wheel. In the kitchen there is still a jar of buttons that my mother brought, just in case. In the hallway there is a hook where she used to hang her coat, as if she were marking her territory. On the bookshelf are novels she never read but kept for looks. I left them there to remind myself that other people's things may look cozy only at first glance. Lily once asked if I could lock the door if Grandma came in without ringing the bell. I answered that I could, and I felt something heavy lift from my chest. Sometimes the past comes back in the form of the smell of perfume, or the click of heels on the stairs. I always make sure the door is locked then. I remember how my mom could stay silent all night if I did something wrong, and that silence was louder than any yelling. Jenna would laugh on purpose at times like that to show me she wasn't in any danger. Sometimes I wished I was in another family where silence meant peace, not punishment. I learned to read danger in the fleeting movement of an eyebrow. Now when I clean the apartment, I always feel like I'm being watched. Lily sometimes glances at the door, as if she's waiting for it to open on its own. I notice I've started listening for footsteps on the stairs, trying to guess who's coming. These habits stretch back to the years when calm could crumble in a second. On the wall hangs a picture of me and Lily at the beach, and Mom is absent, a rare shot without her shadow. In the closet is a box of my childhood drawings that I've been hiding from her criticism. I keep them as proof that it's possible to live without approval from above. Each of Lily's drawings is a little resistance. In the evening, I sometimes turn up the music a little louder to drown out my thoughts. Lily then dances, waving her arms, and I can see the absence of fear in her. The contrast reminds me why I'm doing all this, and why there's no going back. Sometimes I catch myself taking a deep breath before I open the door, as if I'm going in for an exam. Lily hides behind me at times like this, even if we're just meeting the delivery guy. It's the little things that give away how many years we've lived on guard, and how hard it is to learn to relax. I think back to when my mom once told me that tears are manipulative. I was 10 and I had just banged my knee. Jenna was sitting next to me at the time, getting comforted for being offended by the joke. That's when I first realized that our rules were different. I am now building a home where fear is not written into the rules. Lily is learning to say no, and make eye contact without lowering her gaze. I see this as my biggest result, and I realize that the past is on the other side of the door. I applied to the court in the early morning, before the city had even woken up. The hallway smelled of coffee and paper, and the front desk window reflected my own gaze, tired but collected. Lily was at home with a neighbor at the time, and for the first time in a long time I left her without the worry of someone knocking on the door uninvited. The secretary took the papers, checked the signatures, and said a decision would be quick. I felt my chest grow lighter, but at the same time there was a strange feeling of emptiness. It was like the aftermath of a storm, quiet, but still ringing in my ears. When I stepped outside, the morning air seemed cleaner. Even the footsteps of passers-by sounded softer. I walked to the bus stop and caught myself thinking that no one was following me. This simple lack of following seemed like a luxury. In the evening, I told Lily that now Grandma and Auntie couldn't come over without permission. She nodded, but I noticed how long she stared at the door afterward. Children don't immediately believe in change. The first few days of silence were unaccustomed. The phone was silent, the mailbox empty. I cleaned the apartment, put on music, and Lily and I drew dragons and rainbows on large sheets of paper. We pasted these drawings on the wall, and they became our amulets. But along with the silence came a realization. Now I had to build a house for Lily on my own, a house where she wouldn't be afraid. And that would be harder than filling out forms in court. The kitchen was silent, only the refrigerator sighed occasionally as if it too was relieved. I opened the windows, letting in the smell of morning bread from the neighborhood bakery. Lily came running in her pajamas, her hair disheveled, and asked if she could skip preschool today. I said she could, and we made ourselves a breakfast of pancakes and jam the neighbor had given us. In the evening we went out to the park, where I hadn't been all year for fear of running into them. Lily rode the swings and I sat on a bench and watched people. No one looked at us with suspicion, no one whispered behind our backs. I felt almost like a normal person. A couple days later, I received a letter from the court confirming the temporary ban on approaching. The paper seemed light, but it weighed a lifetime to me. I put it in a drawer with important documents and covered it with an envelope with pictures of Lily. It was symbolic protection over memories. In the evenings we watched old cartoons and ate popcorn straight from the pot. Lily laughed in a way that made me forget all the conversations and fights of the last few years. Sometimes I caught myself just listening to her laugh. That sound was the best proof that I had done the right thing. On the third day, I noticed that Lily had stopped flinching at the doorbell. Before, she would always ask who it was even if I had already opened it. Now she just kept drawing or playing as if there were no unexpected visits in the world. It was a small miracle that I cherished. I cleaned up my closet, removing anything that reminded me of them. The old photo albums went into a box on the mezzanine. Lily helped, but I could see she was looking at each photo with interest. I explained that some of the people in the pictures didn't bring us joy and we could live without them. One night I woke up to the fact that the apartment was too quiet. This peace was unaccustomed, almost unsettling. I went to the kitchen, poured myself some tea, and stared out the window at the sleeping city for a long time. For the first time in years, I didn't expect anyone to disturb this moment. We started going to the library on Saturdays. Lily took books with colorful pictures and I took novels that I always put off for later. No one asked questions or tried to look into our lives. This freedom of choice seemed like something new and precious. In the evenings, I began to light candles on the windowsill. Lily said it made our house look like a fairy tale. That soft light made us feel safe. I realized that simple rituals can be stronger than locks. At the store by the house, the clerk asked why I started coming in more often. I replied that I had more time now. She smiled, but there was something like understanding in her gaze. Even outsiders sometimes sense change. I enrolled in a ceramics class. Molding with clay turned out to be meditative and quiet. Lily made a small cookie cup and we decided to keep it in a prominent place. This object became a symbol of our new beginning. In the fourth week of silence, I realized that I had stopped expecting calls. The phone was still sitting on the shelf, but it was no longer a source of anxiety. Lily was learning a new song and running around the apartment singing every line. I listened to her and thought that this is the real peace of mind. Sometimes I think about how long we lived in shock waiting mode. Lily in those years quickly learned to recognize moods in her steps. She doesn't need those skills now, and that's the best I can give her. We're learning to live without looking back. I rearranged the living room furniture. I wanted the space to be truly ours, without the shadows of the past. Lily helped by dragging pillows and figuring out new places for books. This chaos was joyful, not unsettling. We started dinner on the balcony, even when it was chilly. Lily wrapped herself in plaid and told stories she made up as she went along. I listened and realized that there was no fear or anger in those stories. It meant that the house had become a refuge for her. In the kitchen, I hung a little bell by the door. It rang every time we went in or out. Lily said it was like saying hello and goodbye at the same time. And I agreed, let our house ring instead of silence. One day we went to the market to buy fruit. Lily was picking apples as if the fate of dinner depended on it. I watched her and thought that it was scenes like this that were real life. No one interfered, no one dictated what we needed. In the evening I made a little holiday for myself. I bought flowers. I put them in a vase in the kitchen, and the smell wafted through the apartment. Lily said that now it was spring even in December. That simple gesture filled the house with warmth. I started staying late at work, not because I was afraid to go home, but because I wanted to finish what I had started. Colleagues marveled at my mood, and I just felt like I was living. Lily greeted me at the door with a hug, and that was better than any words could say. I realized I was no longer counting the minutes until the end of the day. In the closet on the shelf is the very warrant from the court. I keep it not out of revenge, but as a reminder that borders can and should be protected. Lily doesn't understand the importance of that document yet. But someday I'll tell her that it's what gave us our freedom. Have you had a time when silence in the house was the best news you've heard in years? Share your story and subscribe so you don't miss the sequel.